Hello and welcome. The dot-com crash of the late 1990s left a lot of people nervous about building business models around the internet. About a decade later, a few dominant players have become household names, such as Google and Yahoo. More recently, sites based around open access to information have proved the World Wide Web still has a few surprises in store. On this show, we talk to two of the leading figures behind this grassroots internet movement. Jimmy Wales launched Wikipedia in 2001 as an online encyclopedia which allows people to edit the content on its pages. Within just a few years, it's become one of the most popular internet sites in the world. Also with us is Craig Newmark, who set up Craigslist, an online classified ad site, in 1995. Today, it generates about 3 billion page views per month. Gents, good to talk with you both.
Thanks for having us.
Jimmy, I've got to start off by asking you about the new search engine. You want to sort of take a new radical approach to how search engines work. Look here, search.
Yeah, so basically the idea, all of my ideas come from the idea of free software, open source software. One of the problems we have right now is that the search engines are really black boxes. Like nobody really knows exactly how they're ranking things or why. I feel like that's something that we should be a little bit concerned about as citizens of the world, people who are using the internet. We have to realize that the search results that you get are an editorial judgment that's being made by somebody somehow.
They're also a business judgment as well, aren't they? Because there are people who actually specialize in putting those, your name or your site.
Oh yeah. And that's one of the problems, is that because it's all secret algorithms, people are always trying to game the system and things like this. So the idea is basically to say, let's have an open source search engine, all the algorithms published, all of the editorial judgments that are made, even when computer algorithms are making the decisions, there's still a lot of editorial judgment that goes into that. We want to push all of that decision making out into the public as much as possible on the principle of Wikipedia. So that's what I'm working on these days.
How will that work in terms of speed and efficiency?
Well, it shouldn't be any different. I mean, in terms of what we're envisioning for the website itself, very standard interface, a search box, you type in, you get something back. It's just really about how is that controlled behind the scenes, and that's something that we want to put in the hands of the public.
Craig Newmark, Craigslist has actually been going about a dozen years. I mean, it's come more into prominence recently, and I think people have got into this whole idea of, the sort of open access stuff. I just want to ask, you describe yourself as that, in the hare and tortoise race. You've sort of said you're the tortoise, but you're sort of ahead, having survived all the tough period in the dot-com. What is it about the model you think that works so well?
Well, we run Craigslist as a community service, meaning that our site is almost entirely free. We charge enough to pay the bills and do a little bit beyond. But if you look at our site and what we really practice, our site is about people helping each other out. Our site is about giving people a break, and that works for us.
You are for-profit, though. I mean, is it a good business model?
Okay. On paper, we're a for-profit, and to our surprise, the site is profitable. But ultimately, we make a very tiny fraction of what we could. That feels right.
Now, is it a model you can evolve? Because I understand you will start looking at ways to generate a bit more revenue.
We're not interested. We don't really care about generating more revenue. We don't care about selling the company or making it public and going to Wall Street. It doesn't really matter. It adds no value to our lives.
Jimmy, it's interesting because both of you have the similar approach, and as I was saying, this more grassroots internet model, meaning that people control what's going out on the web much more. And I wonder, what risks you see with having that kind of model where people are in control, because of course then people can have their own agenda too.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the interesting things about it is that it turns out most people are basically good, and there's of course always a small number of bad actors in the community, and you have to figure out ways of dealing with that. But that's really no different than what we expect and experience in day-to-day life. One of the things I always talk about is, if you design your system around the worst-case scenario, it would be like designing a restaurant where you're going to put everybody in a cage because people have knives and might stab each other. Well, realistically speaking, people usually don't do bad things, and so...
You did have a few sleepless nights initially, though, didn't you, about the way people might...
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, when I first opened up Wikipedia, I just thought, well, this is crazy and it's not going to work. It'll work as long as nobody finds out about it. Well, it just kept working over time, and actually one of the things that people always ask is, well, when it was not so big, it was working fine, but as it gets bigger and bigger, won't it start to fail? And actually, one of the lessons I learned from Craig, one of the things Craig always says is, that the bad people are early adopters, the criminals and the scam artists and the people trying to make trouble for others. The lunatics is what we deal with more than anything else. And well, believe me, they showed up a long, long time ago at Wikipedia. Now, as more and more people come in, it's you know, it's somebody's mother and somebody's aunt and your cousin, and it's, you know, basically normal people coming in.
And also having that people factor, Craig, it also makes it anti-corporate to some degree, doesn't it?
Well, that word is a dangerous one. Let's say that it's just about people helping each other out, and about running businesses where, well, where the businessmen treat other people like they want to be treated. That's a core value of pretty much everyone. It seems pretty much everyone across the world. Again, you want to treat people like you want to be treated, and if you run your business like that, I think you're going to be more successful.
And you've attributed with coining the phrase nerd values. What did you mean by that?
Let's just say when I went through high school, I was one of those kids who liked to show off their knowledge, and in a way which was very, very foolish and really didn't help my social growth. But the idea is that, well, in terms of this idea of nerd values, it's more satisfying to try to change the world a little bit than to try to make a lot of money. Because right now, I'm living comfortably, and I don't see any point in making more money.
It's a small team you have, isn't it?
There's 25 of us.
You know, now people are getting quite smart with what Wikipedia can do for them, and there are even companies that have, you know, PR agencies helping to shape their you know, their information on Wikipedia.
Well, what we haven't seen is anybody really be able to effectively undermine the neutrality of Wikipedia. We always think it's unfortunate if a company or their PR agent comes in and tries to secretly manipulate Wikipedia. They're normally very unsuccessful with that. But at the same time, we welcome them to come and participate openly in the process. So if a company or an individual has a problem with something in an article, they should just go to the discussion page and say, hey, look, here's the problem I'm having. This information is not correct, or maybe it's just biased or something, but, you know, here's a link to a news story that gives the other side, or here's a link to our official response on the company website, things like this. The community responds really well to that, and really to say, yeah, you know, we really want to be fair.
They keep it in check.
They keep it in check, yeah.
It's hard, actually, because it's hard to get away with anything, really, as you say, there are people in check, because I think you even got into a little trouble for going in and modifying it.
Well, I mean, but I participated and openly edited under my own name, so it was funny because at that time it wasn't controversial at all within the community to edit your own biography. You know, doing it publicly and openly, but the media thought it was a big deal.
So I guess a sort of number of rules get developed over a period of time. People set a protocol. They say it's not good to
Absolutely,
go and
and all of that comes from the community as we learn together over time what kinds of things we think are acceptable or not acceptable. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that at Craigslist the values have matured and subtly changed over time as people began to realize, oh, this is actually a problem, or we thought this was a problem, but it isn't. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, over time, we're just trying to find different techniques, different methods to find out who's, say, spamming the site or who's posting defamatory material. We try to keep the site as open as possible, letting the people who use our site vote in a way if they see a bad ad by flagging it. There was a guy who commented both on the models used in Wikipedia and Craigslist, a guy named Winston Churchill, who said that democracy is a lousy way to run a government, is a lousy way to govern something, but it's the best system we've tried.
That's right. It goes back in it.
He is not commenting much these days.
I was going to ask you how you manage with 3 billion page views per month. I mean, it's a phenomenal number.
Well, it's over 8.6 billion now.
Oh, wow. Goodness.
And there the key is keeping the site as simple as possible. And we have a really good Chief Technology Officer, Eric Scheid, who keeps ahead of the curve. We keep making the software underneath smarter and smarter.
So one of the things that Craig and I have laughed together about before is we're always held up as shining models of the Web 2.0, the most modern cutting-edge websites, and yet the functioning of both of the websites is, well, we don't use a lot of fancy JavaScript or AJAX technologies. It's very basic stuff. keeping it simple. So what's innovative is the social model, not the actual technology. Yeah.
Now, what is it, do you think, Jimmy, about the grassroots aspect? Is it that people now are feeling empowered that they can go and do things? Is that what makes it so popular?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we all kind of realized at the beginning of the internet, that this was going to be a massively participatory medium, but it took a while, and we're still only at the very beginning, if you ask me. It took a while to really think about how can you evolve social systems that would work, and so how can you evolve systems that keep out the bad guys. So, lots of people would imagine, an idea like the way Craigslist operates today. At least some vague idea of that would, well, people could just go to a site and post their ads and they wouldn't have to pay anything because it's just really cheap. And then people say, oh, that wouldn't work because, it's going to be covered up in spam, right? It's just going to be full of spam, so how can you deal with that? Turns out you can deal with that, but it took a while to think of how you can empower the community to do that.
Jimmy said, that it's amazing. People expected not to go with this kind of model because it may get over-spammed or whatever. It may just clog up, and yet it's worked. Yeah, how do you deal with the critics who say that, what this is doing by bringing in all these, different, bringing in the whole world, so to speak, that suddenly no one really knows what the truth is. No one really knows, the facts because there's no authority behind it.
Well, on our site, which is just classifieds, there's no expectations along those lines. On Wikipedia, there's a major expectation, but the problem of disinformation pervades the net, and it will be a big problem on the net, at least regarding the presidential campaign next year. It's already starting to happen.
In fact, I was going to ask you about that. There are the critics, and people have almost sort of written books analysing this. Andrew Keane wrote one saying, if we're all amateurs, there are no experts. That the idea that if everyone's an expert, suddenly, if everyone's an amateur expert, so to speak, there's no real authority.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is people often assume that we take this kind of attitude, but within the Wikipedia community, there's a real reverence for experts, and we're very traditional in our internal values about things like citing your sources and what kind of sources are valid. You look for something that's in a peer-reviewed academic journal, that's a good source. And so it's, to some extent, that criticism is a bit unfair. I mean, the idea that anyone can edit Wikipedia is certainly something that we treasure, but it's not because we think everybody's equally intelligent. I mean, lots of people are idiots, and we have to deal with that,
Do you, I'm starting with you, Jimmy, do you worry about getting swallowed up by the big guys, the ones who've been around? Well, actually, Craig, you've been around a while, but in the sense that, you're fairly new on the scene, and though you've grown remarkably quickly, there are players with tons of money out there who swallow up anything that's interesting.
Well, people used to ask me this. They said, well, what would you do if Microsoft decides to compete with you? And I said, well, if Microsoft decided to open up a website that anyone can edit, I think it would be destroyed in a day. They just don't have the right brand image for that kind of work.
That is where the anti-corporate and sort of.
But really, so we're a nonprofit organization. We run the site on a shoestring budget. There is a potential somebody with lots and lots of money could come in and compete, but I'm not sure what they would be competing for.
We'll take you up. Sort of buy you up, swallow you up. Is that?
Well, it's kind of like buying the Red Cross or something.
Right,
we're a nonprofit organization.
Doesn't really make anything for them,
yeah, it does.
Even just to dampen your
Yeah, well, to some extent, we would expect over time people will imitate parts of our model and do new and interesting things. But since we're a nonprofit, we're a charity with a goal of giving a free encyclopedia to every single person on the planet. And so for us, being, as we are now, one of the top 10 websites on the internet, that's nice, but it really isn't what our mission is. Our mission is to get that free encyclopedia to everyone. And so if we get out-competed to some extent and we fall to 30th, but we're still growing and expanding and getting free information out to people, we're happy.
Now, interestingly enough, Craigslist is one that can be competed with. The big guys could come in. In fact, there is talk about them setting up their own classifieds, the Googles and the Yahoos maybe doing that. Are you worried about that at all?
We don't worry about competition in that sense because it doesn't add any value. We just do what feels right, making things free for most people, which in a way is a way to help the poor, among others, and that works out pretty well. Maybe somebody will do things better than we do someday and will disappear, but maybe that's the right answer.
But guys like you both tend to, because you have this sort of higher mission, so to speak, if I put it that way, you're not worried about the money side of things, get involved with a lot of philanthropic stuff and so on. And I know, Craig, you've actually tried to do some stuff in the Middle East. Or you are doing some stuff in the Middle East.
Yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing very well, but I've spoken with people in my neighborhood like Abe and Sam, who are Palestinian emigres of my age. We've talked about it, and I realized that I'd never heard their side of the story. I started listening, and now I've started doing things like getting involved in microfinance for the West Bank, helping out in a tiny way, say at, I think it's St. John's in Jerusalem, getting involved in a peace group called One Voice. Their contribution has been to ask thousands of Israelis and Palestinians, hey, what do you really want? And everyone says that they want to make a deal.
In the same way, I guess, Jimmy, you know, you're in the same position. You guys are seen, almost expected to do something, you know, bigger because of the fact you're not chasing the bucks.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, it's for me. I'm really not as you know, people assume I'm sort of very altruistic kind of guy and worrying about the world. I'm just trying to have fun. So for me, this is the most fun thing I could be doing, right? And so if I think about, you know, with Craig, I mean, you know, I get to meet all kinds of interesting people, and I go all over the world, and I don't even have time to spend any money. So I'm not sure what I would do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're not doing to be noble or pious or altruistic. It feels right. And then beyond that, I'm doing some of these other things personally by myself because they feel right.
Where does it go 10 years? Now, start with you, Craig. Where is Craigslist 10 years from now? Where do you see it? You know, how will the model evolve?
For us, it's going to be more of the same. We need to be in more cities. We need to support multiple languages. We need to do a better job of detecting spam and so on. And we need to provide better customer service.
And Jimmy, for you?
It's very similar. I mean, we're really very, very multilingual now. We're in over 150 languages, but a lot of the languages are still very small. So I'm turning my attention more and more. English Wikipedia doesn't really need me anymore, right? So I spend a lot of my time now in India and Africa trying to promote the growth of the local language Wikipedias there. And I think that's the future, because we know right now there's about 1 billion people online, but the next billion is coming online in the next 5 to 10 years. That's the future of the internet.
Jimmy Wales and Craig Newmark, thank you very much for talking with us. Cheers, thank you. And thank you for being with us. Don't forget, if you have anything interesting you'd like us to cover, send an email to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is up next.